It started with a scream in the snow. Not a wolf, not a coyote. Something sharper, closer. Samantha Ellison had survived grief, isolation, and the brutal silence of a Montana winter. But nothing prepared her for the sound that sliced through the stillness outside her cabin one night. She opened the door, expecting emptiness. Instead, she met eyes with something wild and pleading. What she chose to do next defied logic, rewrote fear, and changed her forever. Stay with us. What lies beyond the pines isn't just survival. It's a story of connection, of instinct, and of a bond no storm could bury. Whispers in the snow, a woman alone. Samantha Ellison had spent 27 winters on this earth, but none had been colder than the one she walked into willingly. The cabin, hidden deep in Kootenai National Forest near Libby, Montana, wasn't much. 700 square feet of cracked logs, a tin chimney, and a generator that coughed more than it hummed. But it was hers. Hers and no one else's. After her younger sister Claire died in an avalanche the year before, silence had become Sam's only companion. Her therapist called it radical healing. Her mother called it reckless. Sam just needed to breathe. The air outside was a sharp 5 degrees Fahrenheit. A blanket of snow, nearly 2 feet thick, cloaked the landscape like the world had forgotten how to move. Inside, she sat cross-legged on a wool rug, a steaming cup of cocoa beside her, and an old Nikon resting on her lap. The wood stove crackled softly. She had been editing shots from her last trek. Elk antlers rising through mist, a red fox caught mid-leap. The kind of beauty that doesn't speak in words. Then came the sound. It hit like a shiver on the soul. Not a bark, not a howl, a cry. Human almost. Rasping and strained as though someone, or something, was asking for help and didn't know how to form the word. Sam stood, her pulse skipping. It came again, closer. She reached for the flashlight mounted near the door frame, flicked it on, and cracked the door. A gust of wind flung snow against her boots. The cry came again, left of the porch. Holding her breath, she stepped out onto the deck, the boards creaking beneath her wool socks. Her beam of light cut across the snowy ground, bouncing off pine needles and frost-laced branches. Then it landed on a shape. At first, it looked like a heap of snow. Then it moved. A feline form, trembling, curled low to the ground. About the size of a small dog, but more wild. Tufts of gray-silver fur stuck out at odd angles. Its left hind leg dragged, dark red streaks trailing behind. The ears, black-tipped, sharply pointed, twitched as the creature tried to lift its head. A lynx. Sam's throat dried. She'd photographed bobcats before, even cougars from afar. But this was different. The lynx didn't run, didn't snarl. It just stared. Its eyes, golden and wide, held something beyond instinct, pain, and beneath that, something desperate. Sam's breath plumed into the cold. Her fingers trembled, not from the chill, but the realization. Whatever this creature was, it had come to her, and against every voice of reason that screamed, "Stay inside," Sam took one slow step forward. She didn't know it then, but the wilderness had just chosen her. The wild doesn't always ask for permission. It sometimes begs for grace. A lynx at her door. Samantha crouched slowly, careful not to startle the creature before her. The lynx remained still, its breath shallow, each exhale puffing against the cold like fading smoke. She'd read about Canadian lynxes, solitary hunters, shy, nearly ghost-like in the wild. But this one, barely a year old by its size and bone structure, looked like it had lost a fight it wasn't supposed to survive. Its gray coat, once thick and luxurious for snow camouflage, was matted with ice and dirt. And the blood on its back leg wasn't fresh. It had likely been injured days ago, limping through snowdrifts in desperate search for warmth. Her flashlight wavered as her hand shook. The lynx blinked once. No aggression, no warning growl, just quiet acceptance. Sam whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." But she wasn't asking it to leave. A wave of something maternal, raw and aching rose in her chest. She remembered Claire, 10 years old, dragging home a wounded raccoon wrapped in her sweatshirt. "He looked at me like he needed someone," her sister had said. Sam hadn't understood it then. She did now. She inched back inside the cabin, leaving the door cracked open. The wind hissed through the gap, but the lynx didn't move. Sam moved quickly, grabbing the large fleece blanket from her bed, her old first aid kit from the pantry, and a chunk of raw venison from the freezer. She wasn't sure which would matter more. Returning to the porch, she saw the lynx had shifted. It tried to stand, but collapsed again, its injured paw slipping beneath its weight. Sam moved closer, crouching just feet away. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if the animal could hear it. "It's okay," she murmured. "I'm not here to hurt you." She unwrapped the blanket slowly, letting it catch the wind before setting it gently on the snow. Then, she placed the venison just at the edge of the fabric. The lynx's nose twitched. It didn't lunge, didn't snap. It sniffed, then dragged its body forward an inch at a time, the effort visibly painful. By the time its nose touched the meat, its body was fully on the blanket. Sam let out a shaky breath. "You're either incredibly brave," she said softly, "or completely out of options." With painstaking slowness, she wrapped the blanket around the lynx's body. It flinched, letting out a low sound, not quite a hiss, more like a cry swallowed halfway, but it didn't resist. In one swift, practiced motion, Sam lifted it into her arms. The weight was more than she expected, easily 30 pounds of muscle and winter fur. But the lynx didn't fight. It trembled violently, breathing fast and shallow, but remained still. Sam stepped back into her cabin, kicking the door shut behind her. Inside, the fire snapped and glowed. She placed the lynx down beside the hearth. As it sank into the warmth, eyes barely open, Sam sat beside it on the floor, guarded, uncertain. "I guess we're doing this," she whispered. Neither of them moved. Outside, the storm gathered. But inside, something fragile, almost sacred, had begun. Trust isn't given in the wild, it's earned with time, silence, and patience. The healing begins. The next morning came with a dull, aching gray. Snowflakes still swirled outside, but the worst of the storm had passed. Sam stirred beneath the thick wool blanket draped over her couch. Her body was stiff from sleeping in an awkward curl, her ears still tuned to the quiet, rhythmic breathing of the creature curled beside the fire. The lynx was still alive. It lay half-curled, swaddled in the blanket she'd wrapped it in hours before. One of its front paws stretched slightly, and its injured back leg had shifted outward, exposing the dried blood caked around the wound. But the rise and fall of its chest was steady now. It was resting. Not because it had given up, but because finally it could. Sam sat up slowly. Her joints cracked, and the warmth of the fire had dried out her lips and throat. She reached for her thermos and took a long sip of water before moving toward the animal with practiced care. She'd worked summers in her mother's vet clinic growing up, cleaning cages, assisting with prep, learning how to read body language long before she knew how to interpret her own emotions. She knew not to make sudden movements. She knew that even a wounded predator was still a predator. "Morning," she whispered, crouching beside the lynx. Its eyes opened slowly, gold, tinged with amber, alert but not wild, not anymore. "You're still here," she murmured. Sam retrieved the first aid kit and began her work. She cut away matted fur from around the back leg, and gently cleaned the wound with saline. The lynx tensed when she touched raw skin, letting out a low, strained growl that rose from its chest like thunder rumbling on the edge of a storm. Sam didn't flinch. She didn't stop. "It's okay, I've got you." After nearly an hour of cleaning and wrapping, she stepped back, her breath fogging slightly in the cool air near the window. The lynx was staring at her, not with fear, but with something closer to curiosity. She could almost feel the question in its gaze. Why? Sam didn't have an answer that made sense. "I don't know," she said aloud. "But you showing up here, I think it matters." She stood, wincing at the tightness in her knees, and moved to the kitchen. She warmed more venison and placed the bowl beside the blanket. The lynx turned its head toward the scent, then slowly lifted itself up on its uninjured legs. It limped, badly, but managed a few steps before collapsing beside the bowl and eating with slow, deliberate bites. She watched every movement. How it chewed, how it blinked with each swallow, how its body stayed taut, like it was expecting someone to steal the food away. She knew that posture too well. She'd lived it for a year. In the following days, Sam kept her distance during meals, but she always sat nearby. Sometimes she sketched, other times she just watched. She started referring to the lynx out loud, not by it, but by name. Kota. It came to her without effort, short, solid. It meant friend in Sioux. She'd once read it in a book about tribal languages and had kept it in her journal of favorite words. Kota. It fit. She tried it. "Kota," she said one morning as he rested in the corner by the fire, eyes half closed. The lynx didn't react, but something softened in his posture. That was enough. They fell into a rhythm. Sam's days returned to structure, not unlike the first weeks after moving into the cabin. She'd wake at dawn, boil coffee, stoke the fire, and check on Kota. She spoke less out loud now, and more through gestures, small movements, calm hands, consistent routines. The lynx began to respond. At night, he'd rise and walk the perimeter of the cabin with slow, limping steps, circling twice before lying at the far edge of the rug. Sam noted every change. Improvement in gait, longer stretches between rests, more alert eyes. She kept sketches of him in her notebook, fascinated by the power in his body, the majesty in his silence. And still, not once did he try to leave. Not when the door creaked open during one windless morning. Not when she stepped outside to shovel the porch. Kota stayed. On the seventh morning, as she crouched near him to check the bandages, he moved his head slightly and pressed his forehead just once against her knee. Sam froze. It wasn't long, just a moment. But it was enough to break something open in her chest that had been locked tight since the avalanche. "You're not supposed to be tame," she whispered, her voice cracking. And he wasn't tame. He was healing, trusting. Wild animals didn't bond like pets. They didn't show affection. They didn't choose humans. But this wasn't affection. It wasn't submission. It was something else, a mutual surrender. Sam stood and looked out the window at the horizon, the tree line frozen in white, the mountains standing in silent judgment. She didn't know what would happen when Kota fully recovered. He might leave. He might not. But something was changing, in him and in her, and whatever this was, they were both choosing it. Lines in the snow. Winter clung stubbornly to the land. Even as the sun fought its way past the mountains by midday, warmth never truly settled. Sam had begun walking short trails near the cabin again, camera slung over her shoulder, a sidearm holstered under her coat, more out of habit than fear. Kota was stronger now. His limp had eased into a dignified shuffle, and although he didn't follow her outdoors, he always met her at the door when she returned. He never meowed, never purred, but he would press his side against her leg just briefly before retreating to his place near the fire. Sam had stopped questioning why. Some connections didn't need logic. One crisp afternoon, she was refilling the bird feeder out front when she heard the unmistakable crunch of boots on snow. Human. Her spine went rigid. Turning, she saw a tall man emerging through the pine fringe. Gray flannel jacket, snow boots laced high, face hidden beneath a brown trapper hat. His breath fogged in front of him. "Afternoon!" he called out. Sam lowered her hands slowly from the feeder. "Hey!" The man stopped at the edge of her porch, adjusting the glove on his left hand. "Name's Harvey Madsen. Live just down the ridge, about half a mile south." Sam offered a wary nod. "Samantha Ellison." He tipped his head politely. "Heard someone bought the old Baxter place. Didn't expect a young woman out here alone." His eyes flicked to the open door behind her. "You have company?" Sam followed his gaze. Coda was visible just inside, half sitting in the shadows. His ears were alert. She stepped slightly in front of the doorway. "That's Coda, he's recovering." Harvey's eyes narrowed. "That's not a cat." "No," Sam said evenly. "He's not." "Lynx?" She nodded once. "He was injured. I've been treating him." Harvey stared a beat too long. Then, "That thing gets into my yard. I won't ask questions. I've got chickens, dogs. You know how fast a cat like that can turn." "I do," Sam said, voice calm. "But he hasn't, and he won't." "Don't bet on it." His tone was less threat, more weary warning. "Animals like that don't stay fixed, no matter how good you treat them." Sam crossed her arms. "I'll keep him contained." Harvey's brow furrowed. He hesitated, then sighed. "Just don't want problems. We had issues last season with coyotes, and folks out here, they don't wait to find out what's dangerous." With that, he turned and disappeared into the trees. Sam closed the door behind her, her pulse a slow, heavy drum. Coda looked up, but didn't move. "It's fine," she whispered. "He's just a neighbor, not a threat." But that night, as wind swept against the cabin walls and the fire dimmed low, Sam kept the sidearm a little closer than usual. 3 mornings later, trouble arrived. Sam woke early, stirred by the distant, frantic barking of a dog. Not Coda. Something else. Outside. She pulled on boots, grabbed her coat and flashlight, and stepped into the brittle dawn air. It was Harvey's dog, Charlie, a golden retriever she'd seen from a distance, barking and pacing in the tree line across the creek. Sam narrowed her eyes. Coda appeared behind her in the doorway, ears forward. Then she saw it. A shape in the snow near the edge of her property. Feathers. Blood. Sam crossed the yard in a rush, following the red smears down a shallow slope. There lay a chicken, torn open, blood already darkened in the snow. She crouched, stomach sinking. Feathers scattered in a wide fan. Paw prints, large, distinctively feline. She stood slowly. The tracks led straight back to her cabin. Harvey arrived before she could call. His truck barreled down the icy path, tires grinding, door slamming hard as he stepped out. "You feed that thing raw?" he shouted. Sam met him at the porch. "Harvey, I'm sorry." He held up a bloodied chicken wing. "You said he wouldn't leave the house. Said he was healing." "I didn't. He hasn't." "Those are Lynx tracks. It's your cat. He killed one of my hens. That bird was special, egg layer, not replaceable this time of year." "I'll pay for it," she said quickly. "I'll do whatever." "That's not the point," Harvey snapped. "What happens when it's not a chicken next time? What happens if it's my dog, or me?" Coda appeared at the window, not growling, just watching. Harvey followed her gaze. His face hardened. "You want to treat him like a stray dog? That's your business. But you're responsible now." He dropped the wing onto the snow and got back into his truck. The engine growled. Then he was gone. Sam stood there a long time. Snow began to fall again, light at first, like ash drifting from a distant fire. She knelt, picked up the wing, and whispered, "What did you do, Coda?" But the truth was, she already knew. Coda hadn't gone hunting. He'd gone defending. Predators had passed through the night before, probably coyotes or foxes. She'd seen their tracks, and Coda had responded the only way he knew how. That evening, Sam sat on the rug. Coda curled beside her. She held a sketch pad, untouched. Her thoughts kept circling like hawks in a clouded sky. There were lines she couldn't cross, lines nature didn't care about. She could protect him from predators, from the cold, from his wounds. But from the world, from fear. She leaned back, eyes fixed on the dark outside the window. "Stay," she said softly. Coda didn't answer, but he didn't move either. Some losses arrive with howling winds, others with unbearable stillness. The storm and the silence. The wind came first, hard and unrelenting. It slammed against the cabin with fists of snow and shards of ice, howling down through the pines like a living thing. Sam bolted the windows, stuffed towels under the doorframe, and cranked the fire as high as the old stove could handle. The power flickered once, then died. Darkness fell faster than she expected. Coda paced the room, tail twitching low, his ears flattened. He didn't like the sound, and Sam didn't blame him. Blizzards in Kootenai weren't just weather. They were full-scale sieges. She checked the propane tank, half full, enough for 3 days if she rationed carefully. Water was fine, food manageable. She could ride it out. But as night fell, Coda grew agitated. He circled the cabin twice, then stood with his paws on the windowsill, eyes fixed on the swirling white beyond. Sam lit a lantern and placed it on the table. The flickering light cast Coda's shadow long across the wall, tall, wild, restless. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He didn't respond, just kept staring. Hours passed. Sam tried to sleep, curled in her armchair by the fire, but a noise woke her, sharp, panicked, far off. A bark. She sat up instantly. Another bark, closer now, frantic, desperate. Sam grabbed her coat and flashlight, her boots half-laced as she stumbled into the night. Coda followed, silent and alert. Outside, snow reached halfway up her thighs. Wind cut across her face like broken glass. The beam of her flashlight bobbed and swayed as she staggered toward the tree line. Then she heard it again, louder now. A dog. Charlie. Her stomach dropped. She knew Harvey's retriever. He never barked like this unless something was terribly wrong. Sam turned, scanning the snow. Paw prints, dog, and something else. Heavier, dragging. Coda took off. "Wait!" she shouted. But he was gone, vanishing into the white with frightening speed, leaving only churned snow in his wake. Sam chased blindly, shouting his name over the wind, heart pounding, fear crashing through her like a flood. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning in the storm. Then, movement ahead. 2 forms emerging from the snow. Coda, limping, coated in frost, dragged something by the collar. Charlie. The retriever was limp, covered in blood, eyes barely open. Coda dropped him at Sam's feet and collapsed. Sam dropped to her knees, hands shaking as she checked the dog's pulse. Alive. Barely. She looked at Coda, his chest heaving, eyes glazed with exhaustion. "You found him," she whispered. "You brought him back." Coda's head lowered, his eyes closed. And for the first time in days, the storm no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like silence breaking. Sometimes it takes a wild heart to teach a human what it means to save. Rescue and reckoning. Sam didn't wait. With Coda barely conscious and Charlie clinging to life, she moved on instinct. She hoisted Charlie first, cradling his limp frame against her chest. The retriever was heavy, easily 60 pounds, but adrenaline blurred the strain. She stumbled through the wind, boots dragging through thigh-high snow, lungs burning with every breath. Coda followed behind on shaky legs, no longer proud or poised. just determined to stay close. The light from the cabin window glowed like a star through the storm. Salvation. Inside, she laid Charlie down near the fire. The dog whimpered faintly, alive, but hurt. Sam ran for towels, bandages, anything she could find. The bleeding was mostly from surface wounds, his flank and one ear, but he was freezing. That was the greater threat. She wrapped him in blankets, rubbed his limbs, and fed him sips of warm broth. Minutes passed like hours. Coda lay nearby, silent. He hadn't made a sound since returning. Sam turned to him next. "You did it," she whispered. "You found him." She checked his paws, cut and raw from ice. His shoulders trembled, but his eyes were steady, watching Charlie, watching her. A knock shattered the moment. She turned, heart racing. Another knock, loud, urgent. Harvey. She opened the door to find him drenched in snow, breath heavy, eyes wide with panic. "Have you seen?" He stopped mid-sentence, eyes falling on the scene behind her. "Charlie?" Sam stepped aside. Harvey rushed in, dropping to his knees beside the retriever. "Jesus," he breathed. "I've been out for hours. I thought I'd lost him." Sam closed the door behind them, shutting out the wind. "Coda found him," she said softly. "Dragged him through the storm." Harvey looked at her, then at the lynx. "You're telling me that cat saved my dog?" Sam nodded. "Yes." Harvey stared in stunned silence, one hand resting on Charlie's side. The golden retriever stirred, letting out a low, pained sigh. "I thought he was a threat," Harvey muttered. "Told you he was dangerous." Sam glanced at Coda. He hadn't moved. "No," she said. "He's not dangerous. He's loyal, and smart, and braver than most people I know." Harvey sat back on his heels, snow melting in puddles beneath him. The lines in his face softened. "I misjudged him," he said after a long pause. "And maybe I misjudged you." Sam didn't reply. There was nothing more to prove, not with words. The proof lay on her rug, 2 lives bound by an instinct, older than judgment. Harvey stood, slowly, and looked down at the lynx. "Thank you," he said, voice raw. Coda blinked, the firelight flickering in his golden eyes. Harvey turned to Sam. "When spring comes, I'd like to help build a better pen, for him, if you want." Sam smiled faintly. "I'd like that." Outside, the storm began to fade. Inside, something else began to settle. A mutual understanding, born not from fear, but from what comes after. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just choosing to stay. What remains after the storm? The storm broke 2 days later. Sunlight returned slowly, seeping through frost-laced windows and painting long, golden lines across the cabin floor. Outside, the snow glittered like it had never held danger, like the past week had been a dream, and nothing more. But inside the cabin, nothing felt the same. Coda rested near the hearth, paws bandaged, his breathing easy. He didn't limp as much now. The angry wounds on his pads were healing. The spark had returned to his eyes. Not the defensive wariness of survival, but something gentler, present, trusting. Charlie, too, had recovered. He came by often now, trotting up the porch steps like he belonged there. Sometimes he nudged Coda playfully. Other times, he simply lay near him, head on paws, sharing warmth and space. Sam caught herself smiling more than she used to. The silence of grief had shifted. It wasn't gone, not entirely, but it no longer held the same weight. She and Harvey spoke often now. He brought over tools, extra feed, even a new storm lantern. One morning, he arrived with a rough blueprint scratched onto the back of a feed bag. His idea for a reinforced enclosure, something that would allow Coda some freedom outdoors without inviting danger. Sam studied it for a long moment before saying, "Thank you." Harvey only shrugged. You helped my dog. That makes a square. Anything after that is just good sense. They worked on it together when weather allowed. Harvey was surprisingly good with his hands. Sam handled the finer details, like layering insulation and adding a shaded nook where Coda could watch the woods without being seen. She noticed that Harvey didn't talk much about himself, but one cold evening over coffee, he mentioned his son. Travis loved wild things, he said quietly. Always thought they saw us clearer than we see them. Sam nodded, her throat tight. She told him about Claire that same night, how they used to hike into the backwoods as kids, how Claire would whisper to deer like they were old friends, how she died trying to save a stranger caught in a whiteout. They didn't cry. They didn't need to. Grief, Sam had learned, was like snow. Some days it covered everything. Other days, it melted just enough to let you breathe again. Coda became more than just a rescued animal. He was a living reminder of what survived, of what chose to stay. He never tried to escape. He never tested the boundaries they built. Sometimes Sam caught him watching the horizon, ears twitching, sensing things she couldn't. But he always returned to her side. Always. And when the sun set each evening, bathing the cabin in that last warm amber light, he'd rest his head on her foot, tail tucked neatly around his legs, and sigh. Like the wilderness had finally found a home inside the human world, and decided to stay a while. Letting go isn't losing. It's trusting that love, once real, never leaves. By mid-March, the snow began to recede in patches, revealing the muddy earth beneath like a slow unveiling of spring's intention. Sam stood on the porch in a flannel shirt and jeans, her coffee steaming against the crisp air. The forest around her whispered with life again, branches dripping, birds returning, the crunch of thawed ground softening with every step. Coda sat a few feet away, perched like a sentinel at the edge of the yard, his coat sleek, eyes bright. He had filled out, stronger, heavier, no longer the trembling, injured creature she'd pulled from the snow. He didn't limp anymore. He barely flinched when birds darted past. Something in him had shifted, and she saw it. That morning he rose, patted to her side, and gently but deliberately nudged her hand with his head. Then he turned and walked to the tree line. He paused once, looking back, not with sadness, not with conflict, with clarity. Sam didn't call him back. She couldn't. This moment had always been coming. Coda stepped into the trees and disappeared. She stayed on the porch long after the sound of his movement faded, heart heavy, but not broken. Tears filled her eyes, not because she'd lost him, but because she hadn't. Not really. He had come to her when he needed help, and now, healed, he'd returned to where he belonged. That afternoon, she sat at her drafting table and picked up her sketchbook. On the page was a sketch she'd started weeks ago, Coda curled near the fire, the light catching the edge of his golden eyes. She finished it in quiet strokes. Later that week, she sent it off, along with a short essay about the storm, the rescue, and the bond no one could have predicted. She titled it The Fire and the Lynx, and mailed it to the editors of National Geographic. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Accepted. Full spread. April issue. She read the letter twice, then laid it on the windowsill beside a pine cone Coda had once batted across the floor like a toy. Outside, the trees danced gently in the spring wind. Sam walked to the edge of the yard and sat cross-legged in the damp grass. She closed her eyes and tilted her head to the sun. A sound made her blink. She turned slowly. At the edge of the woods, half shielded in shadow, stood Coda. He didn't move closer. He didn't need to. He watched her for a long moment. Then, in one graceful leap, he vanished into the trees again. Sam smiled. Not every goodbye needed words. Some just needed trust, and the memory of golden eyes watching from the pines would never leave her. Not really. Not ever. In a world where noise often drowns out intuition, The cry beyond the pines reminds us that the most powerful connections are often silent, built not on words, but on trust, instinct, and shared vulnerability. Sam didn't tame Coda. She simply gave him space to heal, and in doing so, healed herself. Sometimes the wildest things in life aren't meant to be caged, but they can still choose to stand beside us. Whether it's a friendship, a memory, or a moment of courage, the things that truly matter are not those we hold on to, but those we honor when they're ready to return to the wild. If this story stirred something in you, made you pause, reflect, or remember a silent moment that changed everything, then you're one of us. Join the Paw Prints and Stories community. Not to follow stories, but to feel them. And before you leave, ask yourself, who in your life needed saving, but saved you instead?